Vieques me duele en el alma, Vieques me duele en el corazón. Yo sé que un día fue mío, pero alguien vino y me lo quitó. Yo sé que un día fue mío, pero alguien vino y me lo quitó.
El cante hondo de Vieques, que también son antillanos. El cante hondo de Vieques, es también son antillanos. Vino impreso en los tambores de los negros africanos y en el suelo borincano. El cuatro y el güiro son símbolos de la nación que en una dura faena trabajó la tierra buena, de donde nació este sol. Se duele en el alma, se duele en el corazón. Yo sé que un día fue mío, alguien vino y me lo quitó. Yo sé que un día fue mío, pero alguien vino y me lo quitó.
Hay que hacer una oración por aquellos que cayeron, que extrañamente murieron sin conocer la razón. Pregunto en esta ocasión a los norteamericanos, ¿por qué matan mis hermanos y nuestras vidas controlan? Porque es que en Vieques nos violan nuestros derechos humanos. Porque es que en Vieques nos violan nuestros derechos humanos.
Vieques me duele en el alma, Vieques me duele en el corazón. Mi oficio de pescador ya no puedo realizar. Hay bombas por todos lados y nos quieren aniquilar. Vieques me duele en el alma, Vieques me duele en el corazón.
No podemos trabajar la tierra
Welcome everyone to the first installment of online conversations around the world. No to war, no to military buildup, US out now. Just want to start with you could join the three interpretation channels offered in English, Spanish, and Korean. We will have interpreters in all three languages so everyone can join a channel to understand. Click on the globe icon at the bottom of your computer screen or click the three dots. On your phone, click More and then find the interpretation settings. We also have sent the instructions in the chat. We ask that all of our speakers speak slowly, take pauses, and be mindful of the multilingual space so everyone can participate. We will place a clock emoji if we are short on time. We will have a Q&A, questions and answers, and discussion at the end. So please send questions in the chat to come back to at the end. When you are not speaking, please keep your mic on mute. We are recording this conversation and we will publish it on YouTube to spread the information. Seeing how people are joining from different parts of the world, it is easy to see why a conversation like this is needed. This space is a response to the United States and the Trump regime's aggressions and wars against the peoples of Palestine, Lebanon, Iran, Venezuela, and Cuba, as well as the United States' ongoing occupation of its long-standing colonies of Guahan, also known as Guam, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, and American Samoa. This event seeks to expose United States military crimes against our people, highlight contemporary grassroots resistance to U.S. wars, and unite us in our struggles against the common enemy of U.S. imperialism. Given the massive crises of U.S. late-stage capitalism, rising fascism, and today's wars, imperialist interventions are escalating on all fronts on West Asia, Africa, the Pacific, Latin America, the Caribbean, and even North America and Europe as parts of a major buildup to war between the United States and China. Activists from the countries caught in today's US-led wars will speak on their resistance. These wars include the incredible violence of war games, military base expansion, economic strangulation, predatory recruitment, troop and equipment staging, and sexual violence. The current wars and the preparation for future wars have devastating impacts on neo-colonies from Puerto Rico, the Philippines, Hawaii, to Guahan, and the countries asserting independence like Cuba and Venezuela. Today's liberation struggles worldwide are key in the resistance against U.S. aggression and war. By coming together, we can strengthen our unity and exchange lessons from our shared struggles. The first session today addresses the struggles for just peace in Puerto Rico, Cuba, Haiti, and Korea. We will hear from a panel of activists, feature cultural performances, and have a discussion. Stay tuned for following sessions in April and May in conversation with struggles in the Philippines, Trinidad and Tobago, Okinawa, Guahan, Japan, Venezuela, and Hawaii. To get started, we will introduce ourselves and our panelists. My name is Coco. I'm from Juventud Unida por la Independencia, and I live in New York.
Hello, my name is Andrea, and I live in Guahan, and I represent the Diaspora Collective.
We are very happy to be in conversation today with the following speakers. From Puerto Rico, we welcome Brianna Alvarado Ramos, representing La Jornada Se Acabaron las Promesas and Diaspora Palante Collective, and one of the co-coordinators of the Zone of Peace campaign. From the Republic of Korea, we want to welcome Che Una, the General Secretary of the Alliance Korean Peace Solidarity for Sovereignty and Reunification. From Haiti, welcome to Pierre Labossiere, founder and leader in the Haiti Action Committee. And we are sorry to say the speaker From Instituto Cubano por la Amistad con los Pueblos, ICAP was no longer able to join given the challenging conditions, but we hope to hear from the activists in Cuba on their lessons in resisting U.S. imperialism in a future session, and we extend our firm solidarity with the Cuban people under U.S. siege. Right before we begin, we have a few community guidelines. Please use the chat to raise your questions for the discussion portion. We encourage folks to express solidarity and share from your experiences and analysis. Let's be respectful and comradely so we can grow and strengthen our movement and solidarity. So now we can start the conversation and get into our first question for our panelists. Question 1, the impacts. Given the escalating U.S. military aggression, what are the environmental or societal impacts on your country that you want the world to know? And can you tell us a story of a person or a place that shows what the current war preparations or warfare looks like on your land, air, and sea? I would like for us to go first. Our comrade Una joining from KPSSR in South Korea.
Hi everyone. I'm Choi-eun-ah. I'm a Secretary General of KPSSR, Korean Peace Solidarity for Sovereignty and Reunification. 지금부터는 한국어로 말씀드리겠습니다. 지난 1950년 한국전쟁이 발발한 이후로 70년 넘게 미군 수만 명이 한국에 주둔하고 있습니다. 미군 기지는 미국에게 무상으로 제공되어 있고요. 환경오염에 대한 치유 의무도 지지 않고 있습니다. 그리고 주둔 비용 일부도 한국 정부가 부담하고 있는 상태입니다. 현재 2만 8천 명에 달하는 미군이 주둔하고 있는 것으로 알려지고 있는데요. 이 2만 8천 명을 지휘하는 주한미군 사령관은 약 50만 명에 달하는 한국군 상비군 병력에 대한 작전 지휘권 역시 함께 행사하고 있습니다. 한국군 병력과 무기는 미국의 군사 전략에 따라 동원되고 있습니다. 한국의 주권이 제대로 작동되지 못하고 있는 상황입니다. 한국은 북과 조선, DPRK와 중국, 러시아 가장 가까이에 위치한 미군 기지입니다. 냉전 때부터 지금까지 미국이 안보 위협 국가로 규정한 나라들의 가장 가까운 곳에서 미국의 총구 역할을 수행하고 있습니다. 이는 다시 말하자면 한국이 이들과 군사적으로 대치할 것을 강요받고 있다고 하는 말과도 같습니다. 한국은 조선과 70년 이상 전쟁 상태를 지속하고 있고 최근에는 중국, 러시아와의 긴장도 꾸준히 높아지고 있습니다. 오바마 정부 이래 미국이 중국 압박을 겨냥해서 아시아 주둔 미군의 군사력을 효율적으로 재편하고 있는데 이것은 한국에 중요한 영향을 미치고 있습니다. 한국군의 국방비를 대폭 증액하도록 하고 있고 미국산 첨단 무기 구입도 강요하고 있습니다. 한국 군대와 무기들을 미군과의 상호 운용성을 강화하도록 하고 있고 또 핵무기와 재래식 전력의 일체화도 함께 추구하고 있습니다. 군사 훈련은 더욱 빈번해지고 더욱 확대되고 있고요. 주한미군 기지를 대중국 전초기지로 활용하고 있는 것뿐만 아니라 미국의 패권 정책을 위해서 한국군 역시 미국의 군대처럼 동원해서 활용하겠다고 하고 있습니다. 이 같은 정책은 한국 주권자들이 희망하는 남북관계의 개선이나 한반도 평화체제 구축, 통일과는 완전히 정반대편에 서 있습니다. 한반도 평화체제 구축의 기본적인 합의가 이루어졌던 2018년에 합의가 있었습니다. 다만 미국 주도하에 군사력 강화, 그리고 공격적인 군사 압박 정책이 남북 북미 관계 개선의 전망을 파탄냈습니다. 그리고 이러한 분위기를 이어가면서 윤석열 전임 대통령은 심지어 북과의 군사적인 충돌을 유도해서 비상계엄의 명분을 만들려고까지 시도했습니다. 전쟁의 위험이 계속되는 것은 뿐만 아니고 민주주의의 가장 기본적인 토대마저 짓밟으려 했던 그런 상황이었습니다. 이렇게 한국에 대한 미국의 군사적인 영향력이 유지되는 가운데, 그리고 그것을 활용해서 민주주의가 파괴되는 가운데, 한국 사회에서 한미 동맹이 지난 수십 년간 절대 훼손될 수 없는 가치로 현재 자리매김되고 있습니다. 일례로 2006년도 약 20년 전에 한참 남북 교류가 진행되던 시기에 한국에서 주한미군 철수에 동의하는 여론은 약 65%에 달했는데요. 최근에는 이러한 질문을 꺼내기가 좀 어려운 그런 상황에 있습니다. 미국에 대한 긍정적인 여론은 2000년에 55% 수준이었다면 2024년에는 83%까지 치솟았습니다. 그 사이에 미국이 한국에 어떠한 좋은 정책을 펼치는 것이 아니고 오히려 군사적으로는 더 강한 압박을 취해 왔습니다만 이 한미동맹 강화 정책이 모든 것에 우선하는 이런 가운데 미국의 정책 기조에 대한 생산적인 비판 같은 것들은 허용되지 않고 있는 그런 상황입니다. 지금 현재의 전쟁 준비에 대해서도 좀 같이 말씀을 드리고 싶습니다. 한국에서는 3월과 8월에 한미연합 전쟁 계획을 최대한 실제화 갖도록 진행하는 대규모 전쟁 연습 프리덤 실드가 진행이 됩니다. 이 한미 전쟁 계획은 북에 대한 선제 공격, 또 참수 작전, 북한에 대한 완전한 점령, 그리고 임시 통치기구 수립 같은 것들을 주요한 내용으로 하고 있습니다. 이 프리덤 실드 기간 동안에는 수만 명의 미군 병력이 한반도 밖에서 한반도 영내로 이제 동원이 되고 핵 항공모함이나 핵 잠수함, 전략 폭격기 같은 이런 전략 무기들도 전개가 되고 있습니다. 한국군 병력 수십만 명, 또 대규모 무기도 같이 투입이 됩니다. 지난 1976년부터 지금까지 50년 가까이 되는 기간 동안에 수십만 명의 한미 병력이 참가하는 전쟁 연습이 진행되고 있는데요. 이것은 사실상의 무력 시위라고 할 만한 수준입니다. 북의 반발과 또 군사적인 긴장 격화가 이어지는 것은 어찌 보면 당연한 결과라고 하겠습니다. 한국에는 프리덤 실드 외에도 1년 내내 한미연합 군사연습이 진행이 되는데요. 약 340회 정도 한미연합 훈련이 진행됩니다. 이것은 2024년의 통계인데요. 5년 전인 2019년도에는 약 204회의 훈련이 있었습니다. 5년 만에 170%약 2배 정도 지금 훈련이 늘어나고 있는 상태입니다. 횟수만 늘어나고 있는 것이 아니라 과거에는 모의 폭탄, 가짜 폭탄으로 훈련을 진행했다면 지금은 실제의 포탄, 실제의 미사일을 사용해서 훈련을 진행하고 있습니다. 이 실제의 포탄이 사격장 밖으로 날아가서 민가나 도로에 떨어져서 피해를 일으킨 적도 많고, 이 포사격 훈련 과정에서 산불도 빈번하게 일어나고 있습니다. 이런 그 훈련의 피해 사례 중에 가장 대표적인 것은 지난해 3월 달에 프리덤 실드 기간 중에 있었던 사고였습니다. 포천 훈련장에서 훈련 중이던 F-16 전투기가 민가에 폭탄 8발을 잘못 투하한 사건이 있었는데요. 당시에 사망자는 없었습니다만 주택과 건물들이 많이 파괴가 됐고 그로 인한 고통은 아직까지도 회복되지 않고 있습니다. 제가 그 이해를 좀 돕기 위해서 지도를 하나 좀 보여드리려고 합니다. 네, 요 지도인데요. 지금 지도에 보시는 요 붉은색 지역이 전투기가 폭탄을 잘못 투하했던 지역입니다. 이 지역은 군사 분계선, 이 남북 군사 분계선에서 불과 15km밖에는 떨어져 있지 않은 지역입니다. 만약에 그 당시에 이 폭탄이 군사 분계선 넘어 이 북쪽 지역으로 떨어졌다면 어떤 상황이 발생했을지 굉장히 상상만 해도 끔찍한데요. 이 최근까지도 요 어, 그 최근까지도 요 붉은색으로 표시된 요 그 군사 분계선 근접 지역에서 군사 훈련이 계속 진행되고 있습니다. 서해상의 해상 경계선 일대 훈련도 매우 심각한 상황입니다. 어, 이 지도를 좀 같이 보시겠습니다. 이 위쪽에 요 그 실선으로 표현되어 있는 요 실선이 한국 쪽이 주장하는 경기입니다. 요 아래쪽에 점선으로 표시되어 있는 요 지역이 이제 북측이 주장하고 있는 해상 경계선입니다. 요 사이, 요 실선과 점선의 요 사이에 있는 이 지역에서 남북 해군 교전이 세 차례 있었고요. 2010년도에서는 이 연평도라고 하는 섬에서 남북 사이에 상호 포격전도 이어진 적이 있습니다. 현재 훈련이 진행되고 있는 곳은 바로 이 지역, 이 붉은색으로 표시되어 있는 이 지역에서 군사적으로 매우 민감한 지역입니다만 이 지역에서 실제 포탄이 사용되는 사격 훈련이 진행되고 있습니다. 이 지역은 2018년에 9.19 남북 군사합의를 통해서 군사 완충지대로 설정됐던 지역입니다. 훈련이 중단되어 있었는데요. 당시 미국은 이 군사 완충지대 설치를 지속적으로 반대해 왔고 윤석열 전임 정부, 내란 정부와 합작해서 2023년에 이 군사 완충지대를 백지화했습니다. 윤석열 정권은 시민의 저항 속에서 물러났지만 아직도 이 지역에서 올해까지도 실제 포탄을 동원한 사격 훈련이 계속 진행되고 있습니다. 그리고 최근에 미국의 대중국 압박 전략에 따라 주한미군의 전력이 서해로 전진 배치되고 있는 것이 한반도의 군사적인 긴장을 높이는 하나의 요인이 되고 있습니다. 지도를 보시면 작년에 미국은 이쪽 오산 에어베이스 쪽에 주한미군의 F-16을 모두 집결시켜서 슈퍼 비행대대를 새로 창설했습니다. 오산 공군기지의 F-16은 기존 24대가 배치되어 있었는데 슈퍼대대의 창설을 통해서 총 60여 대로 전투기가 대폭 늘어났습니다. 그리고 이 지역에는 신형 방공체계도 추가로 배치가 되었습니다. 공격 무기와 이 방어 무기가 모두 강화된 셈인데요. 이 오산 그 공군기지에서 지난 2월에 주한미군 전투기가 출격해서 서해에서 중국 전투기와 대치하는 사건이 발생했습니다. 중국 전투기와 대치한 곳이 바로 지도의 이쪽 하늘색 원 지점입니다. 한국의 의사와 무관하게 한국 땅에서 출격한 미국의 전투기로 인해서 중국과 군사적으로 대치하게 된 것입니다. 이 아래쪽에 있는 미군 공군 기지도 이 중국의 가장 가까이에 있는 지금 공군 기지인데요. 여기에도 지난해 MQ-9 무인기가 새로이 배치되었습니다. 그리고 정보 정찰 대대가 새롭게 창설이 되었는데요. 이 평택으로 군산에 있던 F-16 전투기가 평택 오산 기지로 이전을 했고 이 군산의 공백을 메우기 위해서 F-35의 추가 배치가 예정되어 있습니다. 이 미국의 대중국 압박 전략이 주한미군의 군사 전력을 이 서해안 쪽으로 계속 전진 배치시키고 있고, 이 전진 배치된 군사 전력이 중국을 향한 군사 훈련에 지금 전면적인 군사 훈련으로 현재 진행되고 있습니다. 최근 주한미군의 사드와 패트리어트 체계가 중동 지역으로도 반출이 되었는데요. 주한미군 기지가 이 미국의 전 세계 전쟁을 위한 병참 기지로 활용되고 있는 것을 최근에 단적으로 지금 보여주고 있는 상황입니다. 이상 마치겠습니다.
Thank you, Yuna. Una. I really appreciate the visuals also. I believe we have Brianna next from Jornadas Se Acabarán Promesas.
Hi everyone, can you hear me okay? Okay. Thank you all for having me here. It's an honor to be speaking alongside comrades that are across the world. And yeah, I'll be pretty brief with my response. There are a couple of things that I really want to just highlight in terms of the environmental, but also the social impacts of militarization in Puerto Rico. Of course, I'm sure that a lot of you here on this call have heard of the occupation of Vieques and also the occupation of Culebra that took place in Puerto Rico for over 60 years, multiple decades after the United States invaded Puerto Rico to be able to take control of our lands to use them as a military base. And obviously, along with that, we're doing a lot of military testing, not just bombs, but also testing different chemicals such as Agent Orange, uranium, and other sorts of chemicals that still remain in the land. today. Sorry, I'm making sure that the interpretation is okay. And so a lot of this obviously has a severe impact on the people's daily lives. A lot of people in Vieques today have cancer as a result of the poisoning of the land and the water. But there's also a lot of social impacts that I think it's important for us to kind of contextualize the occupation and the colonization of Puerto Rico in the global context. And so a lot of what the US military is doing in Puerto Rico is to be able to use it as a military outpost, to be able to carry out other interventions across Latin America and the Caribbean. We recently saw this on January 3rd with the invasion of Venezuela and the illegal kidnapping of the democratically elected president Nicolas Maduro and the first combatant Celia Flores, who are both being held illegally in New York City at this current moment. And Puerto Rico has always been used to carry out these types of acts and also these types of exercises. We can also recall, for example, the failed invasion of Cuba in Playa Girón, where the right-wing Cubans were trained in Puerto Rico to be able to attack Cuba, again, to attempt to destroy the Cuban Revolution, the socialist revolution in Cuba, that is not only an inspiration for Puerto Ricans, but an inspiration for people around the world. And all of this is happening because the United States is investing in infrastructure, military infrastructure within our country, while people here in Puerto Rico are left without power, left without water, left without access to food, left without access to education, healthcare. Most recently, $22 million is going to be invested in Fort Buchanan, which is one of the largest of the 7 military bases that exists in the archipelago. And they're going to be completing what they call advanced skills training. And as we know, this type of training, again, will be used to further carry out their imperialist agenda across the region. And with this comes a lot of different social impacts. For example, as the comrades had mentioned before, sexual abuse and violence against women and children. The cognitive dissonance that exists, particularly in the case of Puerto Rico, where we are still a colony, and there are people that believe that the US military being here is something that will not only benefit our economy, but that will keep us safe. And as we can see in the case of Iran, that this is not true, and that these military bases are targets, rightfully so, by the Iranian government, because these bases are illegal, and we have to name them as such. And in the case of Puerto Rico, they're definitely illegal in this occupied territory. And then, of course, we also have the social impact of the military recruitment of youth. We have over 30,000 active duty members in the US military, and this has been this way since 1917, when Puerto Ricans were, when citizenship was imposed on us, on our people, to be able to fight in World War I. And most recently, actually, at one of the attacks in Iraq, at one of the military bases, I believe it was a plane that had crashed. There was a young Puerto Rican woman that was killed as a result of this. And of course, the Iranian government is not to blame in this case. To blame is the United States, the same empire that, created the conditions for this person to be forced to join the military as a result of poverty, as a result of not having access to education, not having access to buying a house, these types of things that the US military, of course, waves in our face as benefits. And so all of these things are happening again, and we have to look at it in this broader context of the recent militarization of Puerto Rico that began in September of last year led up to what happened on January 3rd in Venezuela. And that allowed for the United States to be able to go to Iran, to be able to make sure that they had access to oil before they decided to attack Iran, understanding that the Strait of Hormuz would be closed by the Iranian government. And of course, the cutting off of Venezuela allowed for this stranglehold and this strangulation of what is happening in Cuba at this current moment in time, where all of these sovereign nations, right, that exist within Latin America and the Caribbean are not allowed to send oil or petroleum to Cuba at this current moment, or they're being faced with the threat of these boats being either stolen or just obliterated, completely blown up in the ocean. And this is also happening at the same time that the US is training Southcom or Southern Command, not just in Puerto Rico, but across countries in Latin America and the Caribbean, to be able to fight under the guise of drug trafficking and fighting against narco-terrorists, is what they call them. And this has led to the death of over 160 fishermen, both in the Caribbean and in the Pacific as well. And of course, these have the environmental impacts are uncountable. The amount of impacts that this has, not just on the water, on the land, on the people, on everything, on life itself. And so I think it's very important that we're here today making all of these connections and understanding, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, but understanding the necessity for us to build a united front, a coordinated militant united front against US imperialism, not just in Latin America and the Caribbean, but across the world.
Thank you, Brianna. That is so powerful. I would like for us to ask Pierre. Pierre, you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you for having invited me. Let me fix the sounds. Okay. Am I okay there? Yes. Okay, good. Yeah, so I'll be speaking about Haiti and what's been going on there. As you know, some of the history of Haiti is basically one where of imperialist aggression, imperialist wars of genocide, starting with the invasion of the island by Christopher Columbus in 1492. And that was matched by the resistance of the indigenous people, and later on the bringing of kidnapped African women and men to the island, and children as well, to the island to work as an enslaved population, making the island rich for a small little group of folks. Spanish first, then French, and now, and since 1915, it's been the US who took over for the French. Haiti fought a war of independence, and the second country in the Americas to become independent. That was after massive revolution by the enslaved population, they managed to defeat the troops of Napoleon and declare themselves an independent nation. The goal of the movement, the objectives, was to have a society of equality, peace, being able to produce for themselves and live a life of dignity as human beings. However, the imperialist forces, with the French, the Spanish, the British, and the US, they all sought to prevent that from happening. And this is what Haiti is dealing with today. The Haitian people have resisted, first the Taínos, then the Africans, the enslaved Africans, and continuing to today, the descendants of these enslaved Africans, who are the Haitians. We are fighting for our national liberation. So what's going on? What have been the societal impacts of these? One, it's been the destruction of the societies and in Haiti that existed. And the impact on it, speaking about today, since the US invasion of Haiti in 1915 and the occupation that lasted to 1934, we've had, and after that occupation, Haitians had resisted it, and the US Marines had to leave in 1934. Since then, the US was present but not really with boots on the ground. They created an army that continued the policy of really what you call neocolonialism, where basically you had a small oligarchy, a small elite with a brutal army and really just terrorizing the population and preventing people from demanding rights, labor rights, the right to a living wage, their rights to education, their rights to dignified living as human beings, right to potable drinking water. And so we've had a series of dictators. And so what we are going through, and that's what we've been going through at different times in our history, our people have rebelled and resisted and overthrown the system. However, we've had a combined coalition of imperialist powers, with the French being involved, the Spanish to a certain extent, the US being actively undermining this movement of the people. And so today what we are seeing with the last popularly elected president of Haiti, President Jean-Bertrand Aristide, was a parish priest, was drafted by the population to run for office based on a popular platform of equality for all, of using the resources of the country to benefit the people. And so that the US overthrew that government twice, both times when it was elected, by an overwhelming margin. First time with 67% of the vote in a field of 11 candidates. The second time with 92% of the vote, and with massive turnout by the population. And so both times the government was overthrown, and with massive loss of life. The first coup from 1991 to 1994, over 5,000 people were killed. And many people are familiar with the term boat people. That referred to Haitian refugees who were forced to flee the terror, the killings, the gang rape of women, the burning of their fields, of their crops. Many people had to flee. In 2004, the coup was much more brutal. And it wasn't a coup against President Aristide himself and his wife and family. It was a coup against the Haitian people, including their representative, President Aristide, his wife, and the 8,000 elected representatives of the Haitian people who came out of free and fair elections. Why was that? Because they wanted the US, particularly that carried out the coup, France and Canada helping, they wanted a country with subservient leadership that will allow the plunder of the resources of the country. The government, the Famille Lavala's government of President Aristide would not allow that to happen. Actually, what it did was it demilitarized Haiti. It disbanded the Haitian military and took the savings, the 40% of the national budget that was going to that military, and invested it in people, invested it in the women's movement, in creating hospitals, schools, providing lands for the peasantry of Haiti so that we could produce our food. And so this was this is what we are going through right now. People resisted, but in order to maintain that status quo, that exploitation of our people, the plunder of our resources, our gold, our copper, our bauxite, uranium, Haiti has uranium, iridium, oil, in order to maintain, to have the country open to plunder, they have increased the terror campaign by what you hear in the media called the gangs, but these are not gangs. These are actually paramilitary death squads working in collaboration, in collusion with the government of Haiti, the puppet government. And so most of the weapons that are in the hands of these people, the death squads, are coming from the US. We'll say, according to the UN, over 98% of these weapons are coming. So right now, that's why you see so many Haitians, not only in the US, but throughout different countries all over the world. So many of our women have had to flee. So many of our peasants have had their fields being burned by these attacks against the population. So I'll stop right here. but this is the impact of imperialism on our people, and only by working in solidarity with each other can we come together with a united front globally against the scourge of imperialism that has lasted for far too many centuries. It needs to be over. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pierre. And thank you to all of our speakers so far for really talking about how these very similar systems of colonialism play out in each of your regions. And yeah, just a reminder that as we're like processing this, to really be making those connections about the similarities and the weapons testing and the similarities of the displacement it causes. And yeah, so let's get to question 2. But before we ask our next questions, we want to go ahead and provide context that the U.S. has existing colonial relationships with these nations, and to protect and expand their control over global resources and economies. The monopoly capitalist class pretends to support the independence of colonial nations, but actually installs neocolonial puppet governments to serve their interests. When this fails to guarantee full control, they use political and military power to forcefully seize more resources and capital. Since its foundation, the U.S. has stolen land and used military colonial violence. Since taking over as hegemon and #1 hegemon in the world after World War II, the U.S. has used its proxies in many of its wars. In this approach, U.S. imperialists use their influence over neocolonial puppet governments to spark regional conflicts and to supply them with weapons. Rival imperialists thus fight each other indirectly, hiding their involvement behind local actors like states, factions, or militias. Examples include conflicts between India and Pakistan, Turkey and Greece, and the US-backed war in Ukraine against Russia. And most notably, the US Zionist entity Israel against Iran and the people of Palestine and West Asia. Brutal civil wars, such as those in Syria, Sudan, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, should also be understood as proxy wars fueled by outside imperialist powers now more than ever. The U.S. is meddling in all parts of the globe, preparing for a large-scale war with its named rival, China. Imperialism systematically undercuts the autonomy of countries and turns them into neocolonies. These neocolonies are then used to wage imperialist wars of encroachment to destabilize nations pursuing sovereign development. Like in the case of the Philippines, Korea, Japan, and other countries in the first island chain in the Asia-Pacific, where the U.S. is staging war against China. Like the peoples subjected to U.S. military war games like occupied Hawaii. Like the Gulf hosting U.S. military bases being dragged into the U.S. war against Iran like Qatar. New neocolonies often experience massive troop deployment, like the case of Korea, which still exists in a state of warfare with periodic invasion, rehearsals, or war drills, and wartime commands subjecting the Korean nation and military under U.S. control. These client states and their puppet governments sell out the countries and their land for U.S. interests, and the people themselves are dragged into U.S. wars without their consent. And then, of course, there are countries like Puerto Rico and Guam that are long-standing colonies under U.S. occupation to this day and are still fighting for independence while our lands, people, and sea are abused by the U.S. And so before we go to this next question, just a reminder to our speakers and panelists to please try to keep your answers to around 3 minutes or under so that we can catch up with our schedule. So the question is, why is your country being exploited by the US as a launching pad for war? Is the only purpose of neocolonies to be used in the empires as war strategies? And so first, we're going to go to Brianna. So can you tell us a little bit about how Puerto Rico has been exploited as an occupied country for US wars, especially in the last year, how PR has been used as a launching pad for wars in the Caribbean and the rest of the hemisphere? Since you just got back from Cuba, can you also please share a little on the conditions you witnessed and give insight on why Cuba is under attack for its revolutionary independence?
Big question. I'll do my best to keep it under 3 minutes. I mean, and like I mentioned before, I think it's very clear that the occupation of Puerto Rico is principally to be able to have a geographic strategic outpost in the Caribbean and Latin America. And I think it's especially important that we think about the recent meeting that was held in Florida, known as the Shield of the Americas. Because this, again, the exercises that are happening in Puerto Rico are part of a much broader formation that is being created. And the Shield of the Americas is essentially a US-led coalition of right-wing forces in Latin America and the Caribbean. And this coalition has a commitment and is dedicated to defending US hegemony within the Western Hemisphere. And this is going to be done by increased security, intelligence, and military cooperation. And of course, to prevent China and other competitors from gaining economic and political influence in the Americas. And this is one of the principal issues that the US has with countries in Latin America and the Caribbean that exercise their sovereignty. And instead of relying on the US, they're relying on countries like China who do negotiations with these countries in a way that the US doesn't, because the US doesn't negotiate, the US just takes. And so I think it's very important for us to recognize this. And also, yeah, as you mentioned, I recently returned from Cuba. The conditions that I saw in Cuba, this is my second time that I've been to the country, the first time being in 2023. And what we saw was a genocide. What we saw is as some are calling it, the gazification of Cuba, where the United States is completely strangulating an entire population to be able to destroy the socialist project that exists in the country, because Cuba doesn't have resources in the way, for example, that Venezuela does. And it's the same case in Puerto Rico. Both Cuba and Puerto Rico historically were used as, for sugarcane. And after that monoculture was carried out, after it was finished, the reality is that they took all of the resources that we had, and the resources that were left were investments. And so as we saw in the case of Cuba, with the mafia that was in Cuba, with all of these hotels and all of these casinos that had opened up, and in the case of Puerto Rico, we're seeing the current gentrification and forced displacement of our people to be able to make sure that this land, the archipelago that we live in, can be owned completely by the United States, leaving us without resources. And so I think overall, the use of Puerto Rico is going to continue to be something that we have to pay attention to as a result of this Shield of the Americas meeting that took place. And with this newly announced operation that is called Operation Total Extermination, which that name should tell you everything that you need to know about what the US's plans are for the region. And as Pierre had mentioned, there have also been drone strikes in Haiti. There have been multiple drone strikes in Haiti just this past year. Sorry, slower. And all of these things are culminating into this expansion and this redomination of the United States into our hemisphere and into our region. And for example, to speak a little bit on Ecuador as well, because again, these exercises that they're doing in Puerto Rico are taking place in other countries across the region. In Ecuador, most recently on the border with Colombia, there was a pause. There was a bombing that took place on the border, and the United States and Ecuador both said that they were bombing what they claimed to be a camp that was training drug traffickers. And the reality was that this was a dairy farm, an indigenous territory in Ecuador. And so they're trying to not only encircle the Caribbean, but also the Pacific, and also the Lithium Triangle, which are the countries of Peru, Chile, and Argentina, to be able to take those resources for their own. And I'll pause there, but I think just generally understanding kind of this the use of the colonies, as we see in the case of Korea, as we see in the case of Guam, to be able to carry out these military exercises and these practices, again, for their ultimate goal of full spectrum dominance across the world. And I think that all of us need to understand that this is the new reality that we live in, and it's up to us to fight back against it.
Thank you so much, Bree. And so going over to hear from Yuna. So Yuna, can you please explain the context of U.S. military occupation of South Korea, how the U.S. is currently putting Koreans in danger in its war strategy in the Asia-Pacific? And just a reminder to our speakers to please speak slowly for translation and to please try to keep it under 3 minutes. Thank you so much.
네. 앞서서 드린 대로 한국에는 북과 중국, 러시아와 가장 가까이에 위치한 미군 기지가 있습니다. 이 지도에서 보시는 것처럼 한국의 위치가 바로 이곳인데요. 지난해 5월에 주한미군 사령관, 브런슨 사령관은 한국을 중국과 일본 사이에 위치한 항공모함이라고까지 말했습니다. 올해 초에 공개한 미국의 국가방위 전략에서는 제1열도선 내에 위치한 유일한 미군 기지라고도 이야기를 했습니다. 이 북과 중국, 러시아의 바로 코앞에 있다고 하는 이 한국의 지정학적 위치를 이용해서 미국은 미군을 주둔시키고 또 병참 기지로 한국을 활용하고 있습니다. 미국이 한국을 병참 기지로 활용하고 있다고 하는 것은 단순히 미군을 주둔시키고 있는 것만은 아닙니다. 미군은 한국에 6개월에서 1년 단위로 미군을 순환 배치하고 있습니다. 그리고 이 지역에서 가장 실전에 가까운 군사훈련을 진행한 이후에 이들 미군을 다른 지역으로 보내고 있습니다. 미국의 입장에서 한국의 미군 기지는 가장 좋은 실전 훈련장이기도 합니다. 한국은 전쟁의 참화를 겪었는데요. 경제적으로는 매우 빠른 속도로 성장을 했습니다. 미국의 지원 아래 강력한 재래식 군사력을 보유하고 있기도 합니다. 이러한 재래식 군사력을 미국은 미국 주도의 전쟁을 지원하는 데 역시 이용하려고 하고 있습니다. 예컨대 이라크 전쟁이나 우크라이나 전쟁, 아프가니스탄 전쟁에 대한 파병 같은 것이 그 하나의 사례가 될 것입니다. 또 재래식 군사력의 지원과 수출 거점으로도 이용을 하고 있습니다. 한국은 우크라이나에 포탄을 대규모로 판매했고 또 폴란드에도 수출을 앞두고 있습니다. 이스라엘과 중동 지역에도 한국산 무기들이 대거 지금 판매되고 있는데요. 미국의 편에서 전쟁을 지원하는 하나의 축이 되고 있는 상황입니다. 미국은 한국을 병참 기지 또 재래식 군사력의 지원 창고로만 이용하고 있는 것은 아닙니다. 경제 약탈의 곳간으로도 활용하고 있는데요. 지난해 트럼프의 관세 압박 속에서 한국은 정부와 민간 차원으로 무려 6천억 달러의 대미 투자를 약속했습니다. 이 6천억 달러의 대미 투자 금액은 이제 유럽연합에서도 약속을 했는데요. 유럽연합이 한국보다 GDP가 10배입니다. 그리고 일본의 투자 약속액은 5,500억 달러인데요. 이 일본은 한국보다 GDP 규모가 무려 2.5배가 넘습니다. 전체적인 경제 규모로 볼 때 한국이 이 투자를 약속한 금액이 얼마나 막대한 금액인지는 잘 이해하실 수 있을 것이라고 생각합니다. 이런 대미 직접 투자뿐만 아니고 250억 달러 규모의 미국산 무기를 수입하고 또 330억 달러 규모로 주한미군 지원도 약속을 했습니다. 굉장히 막대한 금액인데요. 이 6천억 달러는 한국 1년치 정부 예산의 약 1.3배에 달하는 금액이고 이를 한국 국내에 투자할 경우에는 약 600만 개의 일자리를 만들 수 있다고 하는 연구 결과도 있습니다. 한국이 미국의 무기 구입으로 약속한 금액 그리고 주한미군 지원금을 합치면 한국 1년 국방 예산의 무려 1.3배에 달하는 금액이기도 합니다. 이렇게 막대한 이 돈을 미국에게 사실상 당하고 있는데, 이 상황을 일컬어서 트럼프는 한국을 머니머신이라고 지금 부르고 있습니다. 전 세계 어디에서도 찾아볼 수 없는 굴욕적인 이 합의인데요. 이 같은 합의가 나올 수 있었던 배경은 미국이 주한미군 주둔과 함께 한국군에 대한 작전 지휘권을 여전히 장악하고 있다고 하는 점, 즉 한국에 대한 군사적인 지배를 행사하고 있다고 하는 점 때문입니다. 그리고 이것을 지렛대로 해서 정치적으로 또 경제적으로 사회적으로도 강한 영향력을 행사하고 있기 때문에 한국의 어떤 경제적인 이 토대와 자원마저도 미국에게 지금 약탈되고 있는 이런 상황이라고 말씀드릴 수 있겠습니다. 이상입니다.
Thank you so much, Yuna. And so, Pierre, what are the forms of neocolonial intervention used against the people of Haiti, and how has Haiti resisted and fought for its self-determination? And just a reminder to please speak slowly for our translators and to please try to keep it under 3 minutes. Handing it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Several things come to mind. I'm reminded during World War II, for example, I'm from the south of Haiti. A lot of the land of the south was taken over by US companies against the advice of Haitian agricultural experts. And the US wanted to plant Cryptostasia in order to make rubber for the war effort. They took over farmlands, kicked out the farmers, along with the subservient Haitian government, the Lackey government at the time, and they started planting these rubber trees. That basically, it was a complete disaster, and it destroyed the livelihoods of untold numbers of families of farmers throughout the South. Also, we've had mining companies coming to Haiti to mine bauxite and to mine copper. And basically what they left behind after taking all of that in the region they were was just big holes and people who were made landless, people who were growing food, living there on that land that their foremothers and forefathers had fought and bled for. We are talking enslaved Africans who fought and bled for that land and to free the land. And so now they were moved out of it, and that land was totally destroyed. Brianna mentioned the drones that are being dropped on Haiti, on most of the people of Haiti right now. After checking with many people on the ground, at first it was being presented as an attack against the so-called gangs, the death squads. But I've been speaking to many people in Haiti who say that the use of the drones has been more devastating to the population than against the so-called gangs. Because given the connection of those gangs and the fact that they are financed for the most part by that little tiny ruling elite of that tiny ruling oligarchy in Haiti, and in collaboration with many members of the government and with the weapons coming from the US, everybody knows what's going on. It was the same playbook during the time of Papa Doc Duvalier, François Duvalier and Baby Doc, who created the Tonton Macoutes, a militia that was just a terror machine to destroy the grassroots movement for democracy that had been happening since, I'll say 1915, but much earlier than that. And people have been systematically resisting. So to many of us, as I'm hearing brothers and sisters on the ground in Haiti, the person who was that contract and is none other than Eric Prince of Blackwater, the infamous Blackwater that was in Iraq. And he has that contract to destroy supposedly the gangs in Haiti. However, from people in Haiti, it's like they are not seeing the results that are being said, that were being put forward as something to help the population, because people are saying most of it is really targeted against the population itself, because many of the so-called gang leaders The death squad leaders are, according to many, pre-warned when these things are happening, and they remove themselves. And so it's the population that's around, they are the ones who are the victims. So people are looking at that as probably the strategy that they are practicing against people. Also, Eric Prince had made the infamous comment that what this country needs, these countries, talking about the Caribbean and Africa, is, and I'm paraphrasing, is a recolonization. So you see, so the old mindset of the conquistadors, of the old imperialists, conquistadors from Spain and France and what have you, this mindset is very much present today. So it's a mindset of taking over people's lands for their resources, to steal the resources, and to have maximum terror against the population so that so as to destroy any attempt at resistance. And that's what's happening. So that's what we are seeing today in Haiti. That's as the situation is unfolding.
Thank you so much, Pierre. And so now we're going to go for a cultural break, and we're going to show an example from Korea that shows activities of the independent peace action conducted at U.S. military bases in Gusan, Pyeongtaek, Seongju, Busan, and other major urban areas nationwide from August 5th to 15th of 2025.
Good girl. Yeah. Have you been eating?
솟은 깃발을 보아라 반도 정연아 몰아치는 포갑을 뚫고서 간다 내 청춘 한장 부끄럼 없는 내 청춘이다 이왕 목숨이다 자주민주와 통일의 한 길에서 투쟁이다 이러니 우리 배에 가고야만 가 우리 신세가를 열어간다 통일 선공대 한장 부끄럼 없는 내 청춘이다 이왕 목숨이다 자주민주와 통일의 한 길에서 투쟁이다 이러니 우리 배에 가고야만 가 우리 신세가를 열어간다 통일 선공대 우리 신세가를 열어간다 통일 선공대
Thank you. That was so great. Just a reminder, y'all, we do have our question and answer portion at the end. So if y'all have any, questions you want to ask our panelists, please drop that in the chat for us. We are now going to move on to speaking on the resistance, the ongoing resistance. What is the importance of the fight of people in the countries oppressed by United States imperialism and occupation to resist current U.S. war buildup? I'm gonna call on Una.
지금 트럼프 정부가 미국이 그동안 이른바 규칙 기반의 질서라고 하는 포장 속에서 은폐해왔던 미국 대외 정책의 본질, 즉 침략과 지배의 속성을 굉장히 적나라하게 보여주고 있다고 생각합니다. 오늘 미국이 지금 겨냥하고 있는 것은 어, 남북 아메리카와 서아시아, 또 동아시아에 대한 확실한 관여와 장악이라고 생각을 하는데요. 자신의 제국주의적인 기득권을 유지하기 위해서 지정학적인 요충지, 또 경제적 요충지를 겨냥해서 정치적이고 경제적이고 군사적인 압박을 가하고 있습니다. 그리고 그 기득권을 유지하기 위해서는 해당 나라의 지도부를 제거하거나 또는 군사적인 침공도 불사하는 정책을 펼치고 있는데요. 이런 미국의 제국주의적인 침략과 약탈에 맞서서 함께 연대하는 것이 굉장히 중요한 것이라고 생각합니다. 특히 지금 미국이 경제적이고 군사적인 영향력을 강하게 행사하는 나라들, 예컨대 동맹국 또는 신식민지 나라들이 이 같은 정책을 뒷받침하고 있는 강력한 축으로 역할을 하고 있습니다. 미국은 이들에 대해서 부담을 떠넘길 수 있고 때로는 필요한 자원을 빼앗아갈 수 있는 나라로 생각을 하고 있는데요. 예컨대 관세 폭탄을 들고 가장 먼저 찾아가서 대미 투자를 이끌어낸 나라들, 그리고 이란 전쟁에 기지를 제공하고 있는 나라들, 또 미국이 호르무즈 해협의 군사 지원을 가장 먼저 요구한 나라들, 이런 나라들이 바로 미국의 전쟁을 뒷받침하고 있는 나라들입니다. 그리고 또 무너지는 미국의 패권을 지탱하는 또 다른 기둥이기도 하다고 생각합니다. 이러한 나라들에서 미국의 요구를 거부하도록 하는 것은 미국이라는 강력한 깡패 국가를 지탱할 수 있는 기둥을 하나씩 끊어내는 일이 될 수 있다고 생각을 합니다. 예컨대 상상을 같이 해보면 좋겠습니다. 제1 도련선 내에 있는 유일한 미군 기지가 철거가 된다면 이것이 미국에게는 얼마나 큰 영향이 있을까요? 또 한국이 북과 중국, 러시아와의 군사적인 대치를 거부하고 북과의 평화협정 체결과 관계 정상화로 나아간다면 또 그것은 어떤 결과를 미치겠습니까? 서아시아에서 지금 전쟁이 진행되고 있는 서아시아 지역에서 미군이 더는 기지를 사용할 수 없게 된다면 또 그것이 미국에게 얼마나 큰 타격이 될 수 있을 것인지 우리가 쉽게 상상해 볼 수 있을 것 같습니다. 만약에 6천억 달러에 달하는 대미 투자, 한국에서의 대미 투자가 집행되지 않는다면 이건 역시도 미국의 전쟁 정책, 약탈 정책의 위력을 약화하는 데 굉장히 큰 힘으로 작동할 수 있을 것이라고 생각합니다. 저는 미국의 동맹국, 또 신식민주 국가들의 시민들이 연대해서 함께 맞섬으로써 이 미국 패권의 토대를 또 미국을 지탱하는 기둥을 하나씩 무너뜨릴 수 있다고 생각하고 그것이야말로 다른 지역의 또 평화와 주권을 실현하는 데에도 크게 기여할 수 있는 방법이라고 생각합니다. 고맙습니다.
Thank you. And I'll be passing the floor to Pierre. Hello, Pierre. What is the importance of the fight of people in the countries oppressed by U.S. imperialism and occupation to resist current U.S. war buildup? Answer.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Oh, there is something there. Okay. So one of the things that the people of Haiti from the days of independence, and I will make a reference, historical references, because that's part of our DNA, who we are as a people. We have a strong belief in international solidarity. So human beings uniting together for the common good. That's how we won our independence, and that's how most people in struggle that they have fought and won based on that principle. There is a saying in Creole that we have to get away from. It says, affaire cabrit, pas affaire mouton. That means the business of the goats is not the business of the land. But the lamb and the goats must come together in order to have a common front, a united front. When Haiti was created as a nation, it was created out of struggle. And at that time, slavery it has been recognized by the UN recently this week on the initiative of Ghana that slavery was the gravest crime against humanity. And so Haiti declared its foreign policy to be anti-slavery, anti-colonialism, and Haiti offered, one declared itself a sanctuary nation, two declared that anyone who touches the soil of Haiti, particularly former enslaved people who would run away, and people of indigenous origin, when they touch Haitian soil, they would become Haitian citizens, and Haiti would defend their freedom. And Haiti supported other causes throughout the world. Simon Bolivar for the liberation of South America. Haitian volunteers had fought also in the US War of Independence. And Haitians and for enslaved Africans, when the people from Greece appealed to them to support them in their struggle for independence in the 1820s, Haiti provided coffee so that the Greeks could sell the coffee and buy themselves guns in order to fight for their independence. So we've always had this world view of solidarity, of people with each other. And so that's what it would take. Number one of the important things is to break down these myths that the imperialists they put out, these racist myths that they put out against each other, so that we are not interested in the history of other people and their struggles. And that way we remain divided and fight singly, and we are fighting against a coalition of imperialist forces that are determined to destroy us. And they do it very well, very effectively, so that they destroy us one by one. When if we had a common front, we would be better served by it. One of the things that has to be attacked also is this mindset of this colonial mindset, you see. And this colonial mindset is something that makes us look at this, what you call it, a Eurocentric view of the world. So in other words, we deny our own humanity and put the imperialist view of the world on a pedestal. And that's how we perceive of things. And that has to be really something that we must decolonize our minds, as Bob Marley would say, emancipate ourselves from mental slavery. And this is another big challenge. So I'll stop right there.
Very agitating words. Thank you, Pierre. I'll be passing this off to Brianna.
I really agree with the comments I've said in terms of, the importance of fighting as colonized people in these countries that have been historically oppressed by US imperialism. And I think that we're at a really important moment in history. We're at a very crucial moment in history. And I think all of us understand that we can't fight the US empire in isolation, which is what Pierre mentioned about solidarity and kind of this broader vision and understanding that this fight will take all of us. And it's up to us to complete the Great Flood that Al-Aqsa started in Palestine in 2023, which was really the beginning of a new period of world history, in which we saw a group of people that had every odd against them, every adversity, and somehow they were able to overcome it and break down the walls, which, symbolically, but also in the real world, break down the walls of what it means to fight against the Zionist regime and also US imperialism. And so it's brought us to where we are now. And I think ultimately it's going to take a coordinated resistance. Like I mentioned earlier, I think understanding how all of these fights are interconnected and opening up all of these different fronts against the US to continue to weaken its power. For example, the fight that exists in the Caribbean and Latin America, the fight that we have, that we see in Asia, the fight that we see in Africa, all of these different fights are against the same enemy. And so the more fronts that we can open up, the more that we're able to weaken what is the US. And I'll mention folks in North America as well within the US. Che Guevara said it best. He always said that he was jealous of people that lived in North America because they have the biggest task of all, and that is fighting the belly of the beast from within. And so that is another part of this that is necessary for folks in the US, as much as we are fighting here in the global South. It's crucial for people to let go of their comfort, to let go of their ego, to let go of all of these things that are holding us back, of our fearfulness of what it means to fight against US empire, understanding that what is coming for us is death and destruction, all of us. And so we have a choice. We die on our knees or we die fighting. What will you choose?
Thank you so much, Bree. And so, on that note, what are some tangible ways we can take action, collaborate, and link struggles to unite against US-led war on multiple fronts? First, could we hear from Pierre?
Yes, let me give you the website of the Haiti Action Committee. It's HaitiSolidarity.net, HaitiSolidarity.net. That's the website of the Haiti Action Committee. We're also on Facebook, and you can find us there. We also have, there's a nonprofit that helps to support the activities of grassroots organizations on the ground in Haiti. And it's the Haiti Emergency Relief Fund, HaitiEmergencyRelief.org. Let me slow down the speed here. HaitiEmergencyRelief.org. And so what we do is, one of the things I think that's very important is for us to find out more about each other, find out more about our histories and the history of the struggle of all of our people all over the world globally, and to know exactly, not in every detail what's going on, but to form alliances with people, organizations from the people that are working with grassroots organizations in those countries, and see how we can best support. Sometimes it might take the form of some actions, let's say for groups that are here in the US, some actions in solidarity, push the education so that each one can teach one. We know what's going on with each other's situation. And these are just off the top of my head. Also, if there is support to be provided for grassroots organizations that are in the struggle, for example, local school projects, farmers cooperative, what people are doing on the ground in order to move themselves, to improve their daily life, improve their conditions, information sharing. Because I was talking to a friend and I was telling him about Malcolm X, and they had no idea of some of the statements, some of the positions, some of the history of Malcolm X. I've shared with them about Puerto Rico, and some didn't know about it, because the education system in Haiti omits a lot of things, you see, and I can say it's the same in the US, in various countries, because it's a system that's designed to promote the oligarchy and the power of the oligarchy. So all of those things that we have to have a common strategy in order to counter them and push a people's agenda forward in our everyday life, in our everyday practices.
Thank you so much, Pierre. And so now going over to Yuna, what are some tangible ways we can take action, collaborate, and link struggles to unite against US-led war on multiple fronts?
네, 잠시 전에 피에르께서 교육, 또 특히 각 현장에서 어떠한 일이 있는지, 또 민중들이 어떻게 투쟁하고 있는지를 알기 위해서 노력해 달라고 말씀하셨고, 또 교육이 굉장히 중요하다고 하는 점 말씀해 주셨는데, 전적으로 공감합니다. 한국은, 미국에 의해서 직접적으로 주권과 평화를 위협받고 있습니다만, 그와 동시에 또 가장 효율적인 미국의 전쟁 훈련장이고 또 병참 기지의 역할도 같이 수행하고 있습니다. 제가 앞서서 말씀드린 것처럼 전 세계 전쟁과 분쟁이 일어나는 곳곳으로 미국의 편에서 군인을 파병하고 있고 또 미군이 한국을 훈련 거점으로 삼아서 실전 훈련을 진행하고 있기도 합니다. 구조적인 측면에서 본다면 또 한반도의 분단과 전쟁 체제가 동아시아 미군 주둔의 가장 강력한 근거가 수십 년간 되어 왔습니다. 때문에 한반도의 분단과 전쟁 체제를 극복하는 것이 동아시아의 냉전과 대결 구조를 근본적으로 무너뜨리는 지렛대가 될 것이라고 하는 점도 우리는 충분히 이해하고 있습니다. 한국의 문제가 세계의 미래와 연결되는 지점이 곳곳에 이제 존재하고 있기 때문에 저희는 한반도의 문제를 국제적으로 알리기 위해서 노력할 뿐만 아니고 다른 지역에서 진행되고 있는 투쟁에도 연대하기 위해서 같이 노력하고 있습니다. 지금 팔레스타인에서 진행되고 있는 이스라엘이 학살에 반대해서 한국 시민사회가 약 3년간 지금 공동으로 행동을 하고 있습니다. 또 최근에 이란에 대한 미국과 이스라엘의 침략에 반대하는 한국 전체 시민사회의 연대기구도 구성을 해서 함께 활동을 하고 있는데요. 한국에서의 노력 못지않게 또 각국에서도 한반도 문제에 대해서 함께 관심을 기울이고 실천해주고 계실 것이라고 생각합니다. 한국에서는 매년 앞서 말씀드린 것처럼 3월과 8월에 대규모의 전쟁 연습이 있습니다. 그리고 이 전쟁 연습을 앞두고 매년 2월과 3월, 그리고 7월과 8월에 한미연합 연습의 중단과 또 전쟁 기지에 반대하는 평화행동이 전국적으로 진행이 됩니다. 앞서서 비디오에서 보셨던 이 다양한 캠페인과 집회들이 이 시기에 집중돼서 진행이 되는데요. 우리는 전쟁 기지, 또 전쟁 훈련, 전쟁 동맹에 반대하는 행동이 한국뿐만 아니라 전 세계에서도 함께 진행될 수 있도록 여러분들께 같이 공동의 실천을 제안 드릴 예정입니다. 올해 7월에 진행될 전쟁 연습 반대 행동은 국제적인 공동행동으로 진행될 수 있도록 제안 드릴 예정이고요. 그때 같이 함께 해주시면 감사하겠습니다. 그리고 우리는 전쟁 기지와 전쟁 동맹을 청산하기 위한 이런 노력의 일환으로 미군 기지가 존재하는 동아시아와 태평양 지역의 단체들과 연대하는 전쟁기지 반대 운동 네트워크 구축도 모색하고 있습니다. 이후에 이 네트워크 구축과 관련된 구체적인 제안을 다시 드릴 수 있는 기회가 있을 것이라고 생각하는데요. 이러한 저희의 제안에도 함께 연대해 주시면 고맙겠습니다. 감사합니다.
Thank you so much. And then now our continuation of our final question for Bree. What are the tangible ways we can take action, collaborate, and link struggles to unite against US-led war on multiple fronts? Take it away.
Thank you. I think spaces like this are extremely important. As Pierre was mentioning, I think starting with educating people on what it means to fight against US imperialism and how all of these different fights are connected. Diaspora Palanta Collective is part of a campaign that is known as the Zone of Peace campaign. And the Zone of Peace campaign was a call that came from the CELAC, which is the head of Latin American and Caribbean states, in 2014. And what this call essentially, this call was made to make our Americas a zone of peace, understanding that these nefarious forces that exist in our region, for example, the US military, the economic sanctions that different countries are facing, and all of these types of warfare are things that need to be expelled from our region. And the only way that that will happen is by a mass movement, a popular people's movement, to be able to expel these forces. As we know, again, in Latin America and the Caribbean specifically right now, a lot of the right-wing governments aren't going to do that because that would be against their interests. And so it's up to the masses of people to be able to coordinate that resistance, to be able to expel these forces from our region. And so the Zone of Peace is a structure that allows us to be able to come together, to learn, to coordinate days of action, weeks of action, and these types of things to be able to accomplish what our goals are. And obviously, it's a long-term goal of expelling the US military bases and different installations and forces from our region. But it is possible, and we saw it happen in the case of Africa with Burkina Faso and the Alliance of Sahelian States, in Mali and in Niger as well, with the expulsion of French forces from the region, and a complete decolonization of those countries in terms of the dollar, and all of these types of things. And so I think being able to build structures like that actually allow us to materially realize these objectives is extremely important. And for spaces like this, so that we can continue to learn. And I'm deeply appreciative of the comrades from Haiti and from Korea. We're in one struggle together, and hasta la victoria siempre.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to pass it off to Coco so that we can have our Q&A portion.
Thank you everyone for joining us. Just want to give a moment for anyone who has any questions right now. We are in our discussion portion. I would say feel free to please type it in chat if I don't get to you first. Feel free to raise your hand. We do have one person who has already submitted a question. So folks, feel free to go ahead. Right now we do have, this is a question for Una in regards to South Korea. Jean, please help translate this for us. The question is from Ronnie. I am an army veteran who did 3 tours there in South Korea, amounting to 5 years total. It is my belief that the coup attempt back in December was not done without the United States approval. He is asking if you would agree. Una?
Was the question on the chatting?
Sorry?
Was the question that Una supposed to answer?
Sorry. Someone asked that they are an army veteran who did 3 tours amounting to 5 years total. They are asking if you all believe that the coup attempt back in December was approved by the United States. We also have it in the group chat right now.
네, 지금 질문은 그러니까 퇴직 군인으로서 미국에 아니 한국에 한 3번 정도 가보신 분인데 12월 3일에 그 윤석열이 일으킨 쿠데타를 미국이 알고 있고 미국이 승인한 것이라고 생각하는지 예, 그게 질문입니다.
저는 뭐 적극적 지지가 있었는지까지는 뭐 알 수 없지만 최소한 암묵적인 무기는 있었다고 생각합니다. 왜냐하면 그 윤석열 그 세력이 그 북으로 무인기를 무려 18번을 이제 보냈고, 또 주요한 병력이 이제 12월 3일 당일에 움직였는데, 그러한 군사적인 움직임은 미국의 그 동의나 묵인이 없이는 사실은 불가능한 일이었기 때문에 저는 12월 3일 군사 쿠데타와 관련해서 미국이 사전에 알고 있었고 이것에 대해서 암묵적으로 눈 감아 준 것이라고 생각하고 있습니다.
I believe that I don't know whether there was active support from the U.S. government about the December coup, but I suspect that there is a previous prior knowledge about what's going on, and US didn't say no. Yeah, that's what I suspect because there were like 18 drones flown to North Korea. So uh, for US perspective, there is no way that they didn't know.
Thank you very much. We also have a question for her very soon. Thank you for your translation.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you. We are keeping everything track, y'all. I believe our next person is JT. You have raised your hand. Please feel free to come off mute.
Yeah, hi. So, thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate this, being able to connect the dots, or at least some of them, of course. I was wondering, I think this is mostly a question for Una. So, you're talking about, let me see what you said. You're talking about refusing military confrontation with North Korea, China, and Russia after dismantling the US military base within the first island chain, and instead moving toward a peace agreement and normalized relations. What do you think that would mean internationally? Because I personally am not uh, too fond of Chinese imperialism. I don't like that as a follow-up to US imperialism. And I am wondering what uh, what your thoughts are on creating a global united front and what the alternatives would be to Western liberal democracy. Because for me, the way that socialism has played out until now, I know US imperialism has interfered with it, but I also I don't really like that either.
Yeah, let me try to interpret. 어, 그, 주하나님이 그 제1도련선 얘기하면서 그 러시아와 중국과의 관계 뭐 이런 얘기도 하셨고, 어떻게 미국에 대항해서, 그러니까 우리가 같이 힘을 합쳐서 유나이티드 프론트, 그러니까 같이 연합해서 미국에 대항할 수 있는지 이런 얘기 하셨는데, 그러니까 미제국주의도 굉장히 문제지만, 이 질문하신 분, 저는 중국의 제국주의도 굉장히 문제라고 생각하기 때문에, 우리가 이제 국제적으로 무엇을 함께 할 수 있는지에 대해서, 어떤 식으로 하는 것이 좋은지 다시 한번 좀 얘기해 주시기를 바랍니다. 중국이나 러시아에 대해서 굉장히 불편한 마음을 갖고 있는 사람들이 있을 텐데, 예, 예, 다시 한번 얘기해 주시겠어요? 우리가 어떠한 국제 연대를 하면 좋을까요? 네.
그리고
어,
지금 존재하는 그 뭐죠? 그 민주주의, like the current form of Western liberal democracy, like what kind of alternatives do you think we have in terms
아,
of
예.
government?
그리고 이제 지금 현재 그 서양의 민주주의를 대신할 수 있는 대안으로서 우리가 뭐 이제 사회주의도 많이 소셜리즘도 생각하는데 거기에 대안은 또 무엇이라고 생각하는지, 예.
네. 어, 저희는 뭐 실제 제국주의적인 지배와 침략에는 반대하고 있는데요. 뭐 사실은 미국의 제국주의 침략과 뭐 중국의 지금 행태를 수평적으로 비교하는 거는 저는 뭐 객관적인 사실은 아니라고 생각합니다. 중국이 지금 전 세계에 미국처럼 기지를 주둔시켜서 군사적으로 특정한 국가의 어떤 주권을 지금 지배하고 있다고 보기는 좀 어렵다고 저는 생각하고 있고요. 물론 이제 경제적인 여러 가지 압력 문제라든지 이런 부분에 대한 이런 과정에서의 주권 침해 문제에 대해서는 뭐 함께 싸우고 연대해야 될 필요가 있다고 생각합니다만, 미국의 제국주의와 동일한 선상으로 놓기는 좀 어렵다고 생각합니다. 특히 한국의 경우는 뭐 더더욱 그런 상황입니다. 앞서 말씀드린 것처럼 한국에는 지금 아까 작전 통제권 자체가 이제 미국에게 지금 있는 상태이기 때문에 군사 주권 자체가 미국으로부터 직접적인 침해를 받고 있는 상황이라고 하는 점, 저희는 좀 깊이 생각해야 되는 문제라고 생각합니다. 그리고 또 한 가지 이제 질문, 지금 존재하는 이제 현재의 서양의 서구식의 민주주의를 대체할 수 있는 대안으로서 어떤 체제를 생각하고 있는지는 뭐 아직은 저희는 이제 특정한 사회주의나 또는 뭐 공산주의 어떤 지향을 지금 가지고 있지는 않습니다. 다만 지금 현재 제국주의의 침략 정책에 반대하고 또 돈에 의해 지배되는 이 불완전한 민주주의를 진정한 민중 주도의 민주주의로 바꾸는 것이 필요하다고 하는 지향하에 이후의 비전에 대해서는 함께 모색하고 있는 중에 있다고 하는 정도로 말씀드릴 수 있겠습니다.
Yeah, I'll interpret what Anna says. I don't think you can parallelly compare U.S. imperialism to Chinese imperialism because there's a similarity. However, the degree of threatening force of imperial forces, let's think about whether China deployed their military forces and whether they violate the sovereignty of other nations. And that's kind of apparent in Korean case because in Korea, it is US, not China, who take control of wartime strategy, wartime operations. We cannot control our own military. It's US who control our military. So, even though there is some similarity as a big nation, superpower, but the facet of imperialism of US and China is different. And in terms of what is the alternative to Western democracy, I think we are in the process of figuring out what should be the alternative institution. And for now, I think we have to renovate, we have to improve the democracy right now, who is controlled by money, to the real democracy where people have the real power. So I think we can figure out what should be the alternative political system. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Yuna. So I'm going to pass to Bree to talk about how this plays out in Latin America, and then we will move on to the next question. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think we have to understand the primary contradiction that exists in our world. And that primary contradiction is US imperialism. That is the reason why none of our countries are able to exercise sovereignty, including countries in Latin America and the Caribbean. And in the case of Latin America and the Caribbean with China, for example, I'll use the case of Cuba. I was just in Cuba and I was able to see the amount of support that China has given to the Cuban people materially by providing, for example, electric cars, providing pounds of rice for the country that is, again, being strangled. And these types of things are done without the imposition of any Chinese politics on the sovereign nation of Cuba. These things are done because they are respecting Cuba as a sovereign nation, and Cuba is respecting China as a sovereign nation. And that's a little bit different than what the US, does whenever it does negotiations with other countries. And again, wanting to refocus this, I think we have to understand that primary contradiction is US imperialism. And whenever we start to fall into all of these other imperialisms that exist around the world, we lose focus of who the principal enemy is. Our principal enemy isn't China. And I'm not, I think that there's a lot of experiences that people might have had and all of these things that that might lead them to say that. But I think the reality is that the number one enemy for all of us in the world is US imperialism. And if we don't focus on that, then we're going to lose. The reality is that is the reality of the situation.
This is Pierre. Before we move to the next question, I'd like to say something about alternative strategies that people are using. For example, I wish more people would find out about the experience of Haiti under President Aristide and the Famille Lavalas government, where actually you had a process that was called by President Aristide democratizing democracy. What it meant, what is meant by that is that the democratic institutions were not really serving the interests of the people. So in Haiti, the movement had organized nationally people's assemblies, people organization, down to what they call bitation. Bitation is like the smallest unit, what you'd say is a neighborhood or barrio, where, and I believe Cuba has something similar, where the voices of the people was what emerged, was the policy, became the national policy. Very quickly, I was in a delegation and we went to a community way out of the way where we had to stop the car and then walk for another 45 minutes to get there, to 1 hour. And we were asking the people about the program of Famille Lavalas that was out, a program for national reconstruction, national rebuilding based on the needs of the people. And we were talking to peasants who didn't know how to read and write. And we asked them, did they know about that book? Because it was published in book form. They said, no, we wrote that book. What you mean, do we know about the book? We wrote it. And we were like dumbfounded. And they explained to us the process, which was one of people coming together and based on their needs, formulating an agenda that was to be carried out and implemented by the new government, by the Famille Lavalas government. And that was the agenda that was being implemented in Haiti when the coup of 2004 took place. And so this is, I don't want to take up too much time, but this is, I will be glad to share that with organizations or with individuals who contact us to see how these developments were taking place and why US imperialism, the French imperialists came in along with Canada, and there were others too. And in terms of socialists, it's not the label that's important. Many people call themselves socialists, but there is no real love of humanity, the kind of love that Che Guevara talked about. To be a revolutionary is to be moved by real feelings of love for the people. Because many of those so-called socialist governments that were in Latin America and in various parts of the world, when the kidnapping coup d'etat against President Aristide and his wife Mildred and against the people of Haiti took place in 2004, many of these governments were not there. For example, Lula of Brazil was not there. He actually worked with the US and was the leader, the military leader of the UN forces that occupied Haiti, and still Haiti is under US occupation for the past 22 years. And Brazil's generals were there leading those forces to consolidate the coup d'etat against the people. And they participated in a lot of the killings of the people of Haiti, massacres. And so I'll stop right there. So it's not really the label, what people call themselves, but it's their actions in solidarity with the people who are struggling, who are in the struggle for justice and self-determination and sovereignty.
지금 통역이 확인이 안 되어가지고 잠시만 좀 기다려 주시면 좋겠습니다.
Maybe we can have
제가 이렇게
you.
이거 길지 모르고 지금 이제 나가야 되는 시간이 늦어졌는데 한국어 통역 누가 다시 해주실 분 있을까요? 네.
완전히 능통하진 않지만 해볼 수는
예,
있어요.
예, 예. 예, 누가 좀 트라이 해주시면 좋겠습니다. 예.
네.
네. 그러면 좀 말씀드려도 될까요, 지금?
네.
네, 이재명 대통령의 이제 작전 통제권 환수와 관련된 부분 질문해 주셨습니다. 어, 결론부터 말하자면, 저는 환수의 필요성에 대해서는 이재명 대통령이 충분히 알고 있다고 생각하는데요. 지금 한미 간 진행 중인 현재의 프로세스로는 이재명 대통령이 말하고 있는 자주 국방, 이른바 군사 주권의 회복을 실현하는 것은 현실적으로 어렵다고 생각하고 있습니다. 제가 좀 더 말해도 통역이 되실까요? 아니면 좀 끊어서 얘기할까요?
네, 여기까지. 네.
네네.
So basically, depending on looking at how Korea is moving with the US at the current moment, it doesn't seem like this is a practical reality that's actually going to take place.
지금 현재 한국과 미국이 합의한 전시 작전 통제권 환수의 프로세스는 이른바 조건에 기초한 환수입니다. 근데 문제는 이 조건이라고 하는 것이 그 북한의 군사적인 공격에 완전히 대비할 수 있는 능력을 갖추는 것을 말하고 또 환수에 적합한 한반도 주변의 환경을 달성하는 것을 이제 주요한 내용으로 하고 있는데요. 이 조건이 도대체 언제 달성되는 것이냐라고 하는 것을 전적으로 미국이 판단하도록 되어 있습니다. 그래서 이 현재의 프로세스 상이라면 미국이 가이드라인을 높이면 환수의 시점이 계속 미뤄질 수밖에 없는 그런 구조에 있습니다.
Okay, I can give a brief summary if that's all right.
Okay.
Basically,
thank you.
the strings of power are in the US's hands. So I think there was like some kind of plan, but then because the US has control, it doesn't seem like there is yeah, a viable timeline that is anytime soon.
But thank you so much to all of our speakers and for people who asked questions. And I also really want to emphasize that all of these points we talked about are reasons why we must struggle together. And we see how much the US escalates in both the Caribbean to Korea, across the Pacific. And I want to remind everyone that our series will be continuing in the future. And we will be talking about Guam, Okinawa, and really continuing to push these conversations with all of these places in the struggle. And so, yeah, it is people rising up against US occupation, building power, and we will just need that to build peace. So these conditions and realities are so important to learn about. And if we want to go ahead and play this video and down with US imperialism. Thank you so much.
Hello, comrades and friends. My name is Ale. I am a representative of Juventud Unida por Independencia, and I'm here to play for you all today some music. UPI, in short, is a sectoral youth and student organization focusing on the liberation of our nation with a perspective of socialism on top of it. We believe in things like independence for Puerto Rico, international solidarity, liberation by any means necessary, and the importance of the diaspora into the struggle for our nation's liberation. I'm going to be playing a song for you that's called Preciosa. It is made by Rafael Hernandez. The song touches on topics like the love of one's country, the beauty of it, and regardless of what that looks like, still having that love and pride for your nation. The reason why I picked this song is because
even though the song is exclusive to Puerto Rico, I think we can all attribute the preciousness that is our nation's and one of the main reasons as to why we are in this struggle in the first place. Because we believe our nations are so precious that they shouldn't be abused and exploited by US imperialism and the wars that they're trying to accomplish. So I really hope that you guys enjoy this song and its meaning, as it really meant a lot to me and led to my radicalization as a very young kid. And I hope that it really leaves y'all with a spirit of what we're fighting for.
Thank you all so much. Thank you all so much. Long live the people of Puerto Rico, Haiti, Korea, fighting oppression and struggling for a just peace. Thank you. Good night.